Now, this area of this central sulcus, okay, note, in this area of my central sulcus, it looks like a big fold here and a big fold here on each side. Okay? Did you guys see that? My central sulcus. It looks like there's a big fold on each side of it. Okay? My central sulcus. Okay? Looks like there's a big fold on each side of it. Okay? My central sulcus. And this fold. That looks like it exists on each side. All right, so the central sulcus, the line, and then the fold is my gyri. So if I'm looking at my brain, okay, if I'm looking at my brain and I'm thinking about that central sulcus and a fold on each side of it, all right, that tells me that if that fold is a gyri, I have a pre and a post fold. Okay? So, pre is the fold that comes before the sulcus. The post is the fold that comes after the sulcus. Does that make sense? Pre, post, that fold running beside the sulcus. They're important. Look at what happens. The pre-central one. This is my primary motor cortex. Motor means what? Movement. The post is my primary sensory cortex. So that tells me what? Information coming in. The sensory information coming in. So sensory comes into the post, motor comes out from the pre. All right? The frontal lobe, associated with voluntary movement, something that you are planning. I use the example of getting up from the chair at break time. Also associated with motivation, aggression, sense of smell. This is the area that when smell comes through the nose, it doesn't have to go into the thalamus and be transferred. Sense of smell gets to go directly to the frontal lobe. Every other sensation has to go through the thalamus. Smell is the only sensation that goes directly to the brain tissue. Frontal lobe is also associated with mood personality, decision-making. Parietal lobes, reception and evaluation of sensory information except the special senses. So, parietal lobe deals with my general sense of touch. My occipital lobe, we all know that one, vision. My temporal lobe deals with smell, but then hearing. The big one for the temporal, well, think about where your ears are, okay? Hearing. Also, memory, abstract thought, judgment, right and wrong. Within the temporal lobe is the insula. The insula, a small mass of cortex. Got to cut away to see it. We think, okay? It has the ability to affect and understand spoken language, that there's some involvement in taste, and then integrating information from visceral receptors, information from the organs of the body. So our cerebrum looks like that. And this picture is trying to show how we've got the longitudinal, our central sulcus, we've got the lateral fissure, we've got a frontal lobe, we've got a parietal lobe, we've got the temporal, we've got the occipital. All right, just trying to give you an idea of the structure, the layout of the land, so to speak. Now the medulla, that inner portion of the cerebrum, the white matter, the part that we think of as being myelinated, but hopefully at this point you now know that the gray matter means myelinated also, just a different type of myelination. So the fibers, think of axons, okay? Fibers are very prominent in this like inner portion of the brain, okay? Think of like an inner portion of the brain, okay? Now here's the thing. We've learned today that I have to have communication throughout this entire structure. I need to have communication from left to right, cerebrum to cerebellum to brainstem and everywhere else. All right? So what we say is that we have fibers, the axons, and we've got them labeled. Okay? So in this structure, so that we can have communication to other parts of the brain, association fibers, that allows for something to communicate in the same hemisphere. So if the left frontal needed to communicate with the left parietal, it can. Because we'll have fibers that help it associate with the other lobes. Commissural. Well, don't forget that commissure is in between the left and the right part of the cerebrum. Okay, that gray commissure. So the gray commissure helps connect one hemisphere to the other so that we have left to right or right to left. Projection. If I need to go from the cerebrum to another part of the brain, like the cerebellum or the medulla, brainstem, and then to the spinal cord, projection fibers project from one section of the brain to another. Say from the cerebrum to the cerebellum, cerebrum to the brainstem, cerebellum to the brain. Does that make sense? So I now have fibers that do that. These are think of them as being within the brain. The cortex of the cerebrum, the outer portion, this is my area for neural integration, nerve integration, making sense of information coming in to get the response out. That is integration. So in the cerebrum, the cortex is the area for that. So sensory information comes in, it gets integrated to get the response out. So gray matter is in this outer portion, the cortex. Now in the cerebrum, we're going to also find my basal nuclei, the areas of dense nerve cell bodies, and I'm going to find something called the limbic system. In the cortex, the outer portion, it has a cell. It's a nerve cell with a special structure called stellate cells. Stellate because they look stellar, like a star. They are receiving sensory input and help process that information on a local level. Hold on to that thought. Okay? They have pyramidal cells. That's exactly what they look like. They look like a pyramid. The axon moves into the white matter. So that is now the inner portion of the cerebrum. At this point is the output. So I had my input at the stellate, output from the pyramid. Yes, no, maybe. Sensory information came in to the pyramid cells on my cortex. Information passed from the cortex to the pyramid cells on the inner portion. And output goes to the area of the brain that it's supposed to go to. So if it was think of sensory information as being sight, smell, touch, taste, okay, pain, pressure, anything like that. That information has to come in, it has to get integrated, and then I have to begin my process of output for the response. that make sense?
So is the pyramidal cell white matter, or it just passes on to the white matter?
Pyramidal cells will be, because now those axons are going to be myelinated, their job, what is that information that just came in? Where does it need to go? Does it need to go to, say, maybe the cerebellum to help me with balance and coordination? Does that information need to go into the medulla for blood vessel diameter? See how I'm getting the connection now to other parts of the brain? So anything that would come in, it's going to pass through and be sent to the area that needs it. Because we've got to pay attention to, say for example, skeletal movement. It's got to pay attention to